share with others who aren't able to make it. So we've got a handful of slides to get through here. Hopefully you can see the first one here. And we're going to save plenty of time for questions and answers after we get through our slides. So that shouldn't take more than 15 minutes or so. Bear with us while we go through the slides. And, if you have any questions as we're going through, feel free to type those into the chat box. One of us will be monitoring the chat box while the other is talking. And then in addition to any questions in the chat box, we'll leave some time at the end for folks to chime in with questions that may come up. So again, thank you all for joining us today. We're talking today about the pandemic recovery for an innovative Maine economy, MTI's Prime Fund, funded through the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan. This is our innovation ecosystem support round for the MTI Prime Fund. So these first couple slides are just a little background to help folks understand where these funds came from. The American Rescue Plan Act was passed in March of last year at the federal level. This was funding to mitigate the impacts of the COVID pandemic. A lot of that was, healthcare measures, but a significant amount of the funding was discretionary for states to determine how best to use given their circumstances. So Maine's state legislature subsequently passed LD 1733 in July of last year. That was the spending plan for the discretionary recovery funds. Over 100 separate initiatives cataloged through the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan website, which is maine.gov/jobs plan. Encourage folks to check out this webpage if you haven't already. This is the most comprehensive catalog of the programs from this recovery funding. Some of those programs have already been deployed, and the state has a pretty good dashboard listing all of the awards that have been made thus far. And then there's also a catalog of all the programs that are still yet to be deployed, coming soon. Hopeful that most of those can be deployed sometime by within the year of 2023. So it's a lot of work to put out each of these programs. MTI has deployed a handful already, and we're going to continue to work through these funds as we continue to address the new world we live in post-pandemic. So the Prime Fund in particular, again, these are federal recovery funds from the American Rescue Plan Act, and then so we are reporting to the federal Treasury to ensure we're adhering to the federal guidelines for the funding. Additionally, the state legislation that was passed that allocated this money for the Prime Fund also stipulates that these funds need to support and leverage investments in research, development, and innovation to help businesses in Maine's technology sectors to increase revenues and create and preserve quality jobs. So we've already deployed an initial round of the Prime Fund. Over $23 million approved and awarded to 174 businesses here in the state. That was completed earlier this year. So we're currently in our second round of Prime Fund funding. This round, we've deemed the Innovation Ecosystem Support Round. And Matt will speak a little bit more to this, but as opposed to focusing on directly awarding funds to small businesses, in this round of the Prime Fund, we're focusing more, gearing this towards the nonprofits and other organizations that support Maine small businesses. The application deadline is 2 Tuesdays from today, November the 15th, 11:59, Tuesday night, where our goal is to finalize the funding decisions by the end of the year. We've allocated $5 million for this round, and we've estimated that the individual awards will not exceed $750,000 per project. That is an estimated number that is subject to change based on how many applications come in and how well they all score. We've hosted a couple Zoom sessions now to try to provide support. And again, we're closing in on the deadline here. We certainly encourage folks to try to get their applications submitted at least a couple days in advance of the deadline, if possible. That Monday and Tuesday, the 14th and 15th, will likely be relatively stressful days for folks trying to make it in on the last minute. The more you can get ahead of that rush, the better off you'll be. So we, again, are offering support here through these Zoom sessions as well as through email to answer questions as they come up, and trying to encourage as many competitive applications as possible. So I'll let Matt speak a little bit more specifically to the eligibility and what we're looking for in these applications.
Thanks, Lou. As Lou mentioned, the prime funds that were allocated by the state legislature and also the federal government when they created the ARPA legislation, the funds were specifically targeted to help main businesses address the negative economic impacts of the pandemic. And so you'll see that phrase often in our literature, and it's because we are being held accountable to make sure that the money that is given to organizations and to businesses are directly addressing these negative economic impacts. In addition, the state legislature asked us to make sure that there was a connection to innovation, especially in Maine's technology sectors. And if you're interested in what those 7 technology sectors are, you'll find that on our website as well. The state legislature also required that we have matching on these funds. So the matching requirement is 1-to-1. And again, that's a requirement as stipulated by the state legislature. In order to be eligible, you'll need to be registered with the Maine Secretary of State, their corporate registry group, which is an online database that's relatively easy to register and also to maintain on a yearly basis. Also, what's new starting in April of this year, the federal government used to rely on DUNS numbers, Dun & Bradstreet DUNS numbers, as the identifier for organizations and businesses in the United States. In April, the federal government changed from DUNS numbers to a number that they generated themselves that they call the Unique Entity Identifier, or the UEID number. That number for your organization can be obtained by going to the website at www.sam.gov, which is a site that is run by the GSA within the federal government. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on because it happens to be a frustrating and confusing step in the process for the 4 other funds that we've already put out, as Lou mentioned. We are also asking that you agree to comply with relatively simple reporting that's going to be required by the state and federal law. We have to file updates with the federal government on a quarterly basis, and probably on a semi-annual basis, we would be contacting the awardees and asking for updates on their application and their use of funds. For the ecosystem, we are encouraging partner organizations to actually work together. So if you are developing a program and can solicit assistance from another ecosystem partner, that's something that we would like to promote. However, we're only accepting a primary application or one application from a primary applicant within the state. There is no limit on how many applications you can be a secondary applicant on, but as the primary applicant, it's just one application per organization. And our focus on this program is not your current business, but it would be new projects or programs, again, that are aimed at the negative economic impacts for businesses that you would serve, as opposed to existing overhead. Next slide. We get asked specifically how the applications will be graded or reviewed by the team of people that will be reviewing these applications. And there's really 4 areas that are critical. This slide that you can come back to because this presentation will be posted on our website, hopefully by tomorrow. But this slide can actually act as a checklist. When you're finished your application, I would recommend you go back and check to make sure that your application has addressed these 4 areas of the evaluation rubric. The first is the economic impact to the state of Maine. Does this program address the negative economic impacts of the pandemic, and does it support innovation in Maine's technology sectors? We'll also be looking at the team that will be developing and leading these programs in your organization, looking at the experience of that leadership team, the governance within that organization, and the track record in that organization for effectively using funds. Again, collaborations with partner organizations is strongly encouraged. We'll be looking at the value proposition in the market. Can you demonstrate that the program and the services that you're providing fill a need that's in your direct marketplace? And are you seeking to fund innovative solutions for the state? Finally, on the implementation plan, we're asking what are the key performance indicators, the KPIs, that would allow us to measure the impact of the program over time, because those KPIs would probably be items that we would be asking for reporting on over the next few years. Finally, we'll ask about the matching funds. If your request is for $200,000, we would expect that we would see either $200,000 of matching funds on your balance sheet or pledged from some other outside source. So those are the 4 areas of the evaluation criteria that I would strongly recommend you evaluate yourself against the proposal that you've developed.
Thanks, Matt. So now we through most of our informational slides here. And the last step on the informational side of this, before we get to the Q&A, is just to do a brief walkthrough of the application process itself. I'm not going to read through each of these slides, but I'll try to visually demonstrate them. The first step from the main the details page for this program from our website. How do I apply? You first, step 1, access the application Word document. You can download either the Word document or a PDF if you don't utilize Word. The Word document pops up. You can enable editing and save the file to your computer. You can use this as the template. You also have the option of creating a separate document, whichever format works better for you, as long as all of the questions are addressed. That will be acceptable. So there's 7 sections on the following pages of this Word document that ask for the information, the application information. You'll want to answer all those questions and save this document. Once you've got that completed, the next step is to compile the other required electronic files that you're going to need to complete the online application. These are basic information about the business, the W-9 form, income statements. If your business is relatively new and you don't have an income statement for 2020, that's fine. But we just need historical financials as far back as the company exists. And then a current balance sheet as well. As Matt noted, you're going to want to have a UEID. This has become a significant challenge for a number of applicants, and we'll actually talk about that a little bit more after I get through the walkthrough here. It is acceptable to be in the process of registering a UEID. That process, unfortunately, for some folks has taken a number of months, so very frustrating. But we can accept our we can accept the application for the MTI Prime Fund if you don't have the UEID process finalized yet. But we do need to get that. You'll need that UEID before we can actually execute an award contract and deploy any funds. And then there is also a 3-page agreement to comply with all the federal state funding requirements here. And that document can also be found here on the website in the application checklist. It's a PDF. You can print this off, or you can sign electronically, review, sign, and date, and you'll save that electronic file to include in your uploads to the online portal. So once you've got all these items in the checklist here, you've completed all the questions below, and I'll just quickly scroll through. There's 7 sections of this application, some basic questions, and then a little bit more about the specific categories of evaluation that Matt just went through on the slides, asking about the team, the value proposition, the implementation plan. Folks have asked, if you have some existing materials that would help tell your story and answer these questions, those can be included. Probably the easiest way to do that is for you to just either cut and paste those into this Word document, or if you want to do it as a PDF, you can put them at the end of the document. So that's one way to do it. You can conceivably also email additional supporting materials that you weren't able to upload. So once you get through the application questions and you've got all of the electronic files compiled, the final step is the online application portal. And the way to access that application portal is not from our website. It's using this hyperlink here within the application instructions. So you can either cut and paste this link, or just click right on it. Your browser should pop up and it'll ask you to log in. This is the screen after you get successfully logged in. If it's your first time applying for MTI money, you'll need to create a password, a login. You use your email address as the username essentially. And you can, if you're a new applicant, there's a little option to click new applicant. So you register a password. Make sure to use an email address that you're actively checking, because we're going to use that email address to contact you, both to confirm that your application was successfully received, and also to notify applicants of funding decisions once that process has been completed. So I'll just briefly show you what the online application portal looks like. This first tab, application, has a number of fields to complete. It's basic contact information, some demographic information, and a couple of really high-level data points about your request. These are items that we need for our reporting purposes to both the state and federal governments. The next tab, upload documents, is where you actually upload all those items that are in the application checklist. The first item here is the main application document. And then there's the W-9, the balance sheet, income statements, and then that signed agreement to comply with the federal and state reporting and funding requirements. Once you click choose file first, you select your file, it pops up on the screen, and then you click upload to upload it into the system. So this process can take a little bit of time. Sometimes it can be a relatively slow website, so it can take up to a minute for a file to get uploaded. So that process can be a little bit frustrating, but just stick with it. And if you have any questions, we're always happy to help provide technical support. Once you've got your uploads and your application fields completed, we ask you to type your name in to electronically certify that you agree to our confidentiality and disclosure statement. This statement is also provided on the last page of the application Word document, so you have a chance to review it before you get to the online application portal. You don't have to sign it in the actual application Word document. It's just there for you to review. So once you type in your name here and you've got your fields uploaded, you can click submit, and the portal will tell you if you've missed any fields that are required. And then once you have completed all the required fields, it'll give you the option to complete your submission. So you just want to make sure you follow through and click that final submit, which I won't do here for the sake of time. But that is the basic process. Once you complete the online application, you'll get an email notification to that email address you used to log in, confirming that you've submitted your application. You do have the option of saving a incomplete online application and coming back to it later. And if you do that, you'll also receive an email notification that you've saved, but not yet submitted your application. But generally, I would encourage folks to, you really don't need to bother with the online application until you've completed everything else. You want to have all your application materials, you want to have all your questions answered, have that document saved, just have everything finalized and ready to upload. And only then do you need to worry about the online portal. If you take that approach, it shouldn't take you more than 30 minutes to fill in all those application fields and upload the documents and get it submitted. And
Lou, there's
again,
been a
just
couple
make
questions.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly, I'll say, make sure if you've saved it, but not yet completed the online submission, just be sure to come back to it before the deadline on 11:59 on the 15th, because if the submission isn't completed by that time, we won't be able to consider it. So yeah, go ahead, Matt. There's a couple questions.
Yeah, so the first one was from Jen. Can projects be multi-year, and is there anything different if applying as a multi-year applicant?
Yes, it can be multi-year projects. The federal law states that this money has to be spent no later than, I think it's December the 1st of 2026. So, better not to wait until, the very last minute. So I think we're thinking conceivably 2 or 3 year projects is reasonable. It could theoretically extend out into 2026 if things get delayed a little bit. But the funds have to be spent by December of 2026 at the very latest. And that, there's not really anything different about the application other than the fact that your implementation plan section might have a little bit more, you break down a little bit year over year if there's differences, over the course of the plan.
And the other thing we may want to mention on multi-year is that there's a possibility, if it's a very large award, that the money might get tranched out. And so your second year funding would be based upon your first year results, right? So we would reserve the money, but we would obviously be interested in how the project is going. Second question, Lou, is matching dollar for dollar, or can it also be sweat equity as a portion of it?
Yeah, so sweat equity can be considered as part of the matching funds commitments. You can quantify that time, estimating the hours that are being put into the project and, applying a dollar rate that can be, validated so that you can do that. I will say that, generally some cash match is going to be viewed favorably. So we do want to see some cash match as well. But we're certainly willing to take into consideration other in-kind match.
Lou, is there a max amount that you can use as in-kind
There's not an explicit
limit
rule there. I think
Okay.
I think generally less than half for sure, and the larger the request, preferably the more cash match. So it kind of depends on how big the request is and how much sweat equity is being proposed, but it's at this point, it's more of a case by case basis.
And I think our policy in the past has put a cap on the hourly rate of a person providing services as in-kind service. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a general rule that $50 per hour is the maximum. However, if you can clearly validate that the person providing the services is paid more than that regularly, you can quote a higher rate. We'll just need that to be validated if we get to the point where an award's been approved and we're in the award contracting process.
Okay. The last question we've got right now is, our business incubator is overseen by a municipality. Are municipalities eligible applicants? They ask because I'm not certain if the city would be registered with the Secretary of State corporate registry.
I would say generally a municipality is eligible to apply. That, when it comes to the being registered with the Secretary of State corporate registry, we could look into that. but I'm pretty sure municipalities can register with that corporate registry as well. But that's something that we could figure out. But yeah, there's, that wouldn't be a disqualifier if they're a municipality.
Yep. And Joan asked, does approval or funding from previous rounds of Prime hinder approval from this more project-based funding?
That's an interesting question. I would say if you receive funding in Prime Found round one, you're probably not the ideal candidate for this round of funding. This round of funding isn't geared towards the businesses themselves. It's more geared towards the organizations that support the small businesses. So I think that prior Prime Fund award would be taken into consideration.
And
yeah,
I think
but
that within the state itself, we're trying to evaluate other awards because there's 112 different funds that are out there. So if you have received ARPA dollars through some other fund, technically that would count against your award for this fund or any other ARPA grant that you're applying to. So that's a fairly consistent program that or process that all the organizations that are giving out ARPA dollars are trying to do. That's all we've got right now for questions, Lou.
Yeah, those are great questions. So Matt, the one other slide we do have before we open it up to any further questions is the UEID registration. Yep. So we don't have a full walkthrough of this site, but I will just, before Matt takes over here, just clarify that this UEID registration is completely separate from MTI's website and our online application. So it can be a bit of a daunting task, and Matt can talk a little bit more about navigating it.
Yeah, so the companies that have struggled to get through the UEID registration for the first 4 funds that we put out have come back with some interesting stories. What happens was that the federal government had been using DUNS numbers. They now switched to a UEID number that was available from the government. The government uses a number of different databases that they have access to, and many that they created from data that they have available, including IRS funds or IRS files. But what they're going to do is compare the name on your application and the address of your organization against what they have on file. And if there's a match against all the databases, your UEID number will pop up immediately upon the submission of your file to the SAM.gov database. If there is any discrepancies at all between what you have put on your application and what the federal government is showing in some of their databases, you basically will be told that your application is going into a customer service queue, or what they call a ticket, that requires more manual intervention by the federal government clerks to actually do the investigation. They will also tell you if they're looking for some additional information that proves who you are or where you're located. And that could be utility bills, it could be tax bills, it could be other pieces of data that would prove either the name of the company or the location. So they'll tell you that they're looking for that, and they'll give you an opportunity to upload it. Once it's uploaded, it seems to go into a fairly long queue before it's worked. And we're finding that some of the companies that we've given awards to over the last year have taken up to a couple months to get a UEID number from SAM.gov. So if you haven't started that registration process, you'll want to do that today. And as Lou had mentioned earlier, if you come back and your application is now in the ticket mode, you're waiting for further evaluation, all you need to do is type in the words "in process" in the field that asks for your UEID at MTI. The one key for us, the one tip that I can give you is that when you get to the SAM.gov website, there's 2 options. You can either register the entity, and if you register, that means that you're going to be doing business long-term with the federal government, either as a supplier or a recipient of grants, or you can select the second option, which is just to get a unique entity ID. that is the far simpler process. If you choose option one, it's like a 7-page application. If you choose option two, it's basically name and address. So for us, all we need is your UEID entity ID, which is the second option. So we would strongly recommend that you use that as the choice. If you have questions, we have pulled together a lot of additional resources, YouTube videos, contact information on our website, and the address is listed there at the bottom of the screen. So you can come back to this presentation that is being recorded today and navigate to the help screen specifically for the UEID.
And we've had Brian Wallace from Maine PTAC helping folks navigate the UEID process as well. And we've got he joined us for a Zoom session a couple programs ago, and we've got a recording of his tips on the process on our website as well. So we've got a question up from Jen as well. Go ahead, Jen.
Thanks, Lou and Matt. Jen Swarzinski from CEI. First, I just want to thank you guys. I know putting these programs together can be pretty time consuming, so I actually appreciate all the information available on the website.
Bye, guys. See you later. Thank you.
I'm not sure what that background noise is because there's no one.
Yeah, let me
talking.
try. Hold on a second. I'm going to mute everybody for a second.
Okay.
What are you doing sitting down there like a little puppet? You had a plan to go on the green swing. And then I said, Mama's here, so. Oh, I ruined that, huh?
All right, hold on a second here.
Oh, yeah, so he had a plan.
Oh, nope, sorry. I still have to mute. There we go.
That's it, green swing?
I'm clicking mute, but I don't know. Let's see. Well, hold on a second here. All right, try now, Jen. Let me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think we're good now.
Yeah, great. So one question, I have a variety of questions, and I'll just try to keep them limited so others can talk too. But one is, for me, it seems like you guys want new programming, which in my mind begs it to be multi-year, because I would hate to create something for 1 year. So I'm just curious how match works in multi-year. Can we say, if we put forward a 3-year program and it's 150 every year, I'm just coming up with the example numbers.
Mhm.
Can we show the match we have in hand this year and then show additional match in the future years? Or do we need to have all that match now?
Yeah, I think, ideally you'd have as much of the match secured as possible up front. I think we're willing to take into consideration, though, situations where it's not all secured yet. And, I think that, conceivably, as Matt noted, the multi-year projects will likely be tranched. So, very likely a condition of the second tranche coming along would be, confirming that the proposed match has been received. So we're definitely willing to take into consideration applications where not all the match is on the balance sheet as of today, for sure.
Okay, and then, sorry to be obsessed with match, but is there any restriction on what the source is? Like, can it be other federal dollars that are matching this? Or
Yeah,
does it
good
have to
question.
be-
So it definitely can't be other American Rescue Plan dollars.
Yeah, okay,
Generally, it probably can't be state funds. If it's like if there's like a Department of Energy grant, or I'm just throwing out things because I was talking about Department of Energy earlier. If it's
Yeah.
some other federal funding that's not specifically recovery funds, possibly, but it would just sort of depend on the exact source. And that would be, if you have a particular source in mind, I would just email us at arpagrants@maintechnology.org and say,
Okay.
hey, would this one be okay? And we can try to,
okay.
we can,
yeah,
we got to run it up the chain to the folks we were reporting to as well. So
Sure,
we
yeah,
keep
and yeah.
yeah. But Matt, anything else you'd qualify or correct what I just said?
No, they're pretty specific that they're reluctant to have federal dollars matching federal dollars. And that's what's really driving the discussion with our audit group on these things.
All right, those are great questions, Jen. And if you have more, don't be shy. I think because it's helpful to have someone ask them. I'm sure there's a thinking them. So Joan's got a hand up as well.
I think I'm muted. I'm
I can hear you,
unmuted.
okay.
Can you hear me? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So we're partnering with a fairly large organization that helps businesses with the fallout of COVID. And we're volunteering our services and interactive technology for them to use. Would we be a good candidate, or is it something that, I mean, because it's a lengthy application, and I'm like, well, do I go and continue on this path and fill out this application, or I'm not sure if we would be like a good candidate, or if it would be the business that we're working with, partnering with, that would be the applicant.
Yeah, I think the latter would make more sense. If you're partnering with another organization that is leading the program and you're providing services for the program, then that other entity should be the applicant, and they can note you as one of the partners in the program.
Okay, so we shouldn't do two applications, them do an application and then us just, okay.
Right now.
Great. Well, that's helpful for me, because I was like
Great.
thinking it's a long application. So thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. Yeah, great question. All righty, let's see. Well, we're certainly willing to, I don't see any other hands or questions in the chat box. Jen, did you want to ask any other of your
Yeah,
questions?
I have a few more.
Yeah, go for it.
I guess I'm formulating it, but I'm curious about new programming, and I'm curious if you can just give a little bit more about the 7 technology areas and how I'm trying to think of the question here that might be helpful to everyone, but how
How to
I'm
show the
kind of
connection
losing
to
it,
the
but
sectors?
it's like how much of a, like, if some of the work we're gonna do maybe isn't in one of those 7, but a
Yeah,
good portion of it is,
Yes.
yeah, sorry.
Perfect, excellent question. And yes, and the example you were just talking about there would be acceptable, and that, it is a bit tricky here because we've got two different directives we're working with that sort of align, but we've got to address negative impacts of the pandemic, and we've also got to support innovation in the technology sector. So just for the recording's sake, I'll list off the technology sectors real quick: aquaculture and marine technologies, biotechnologies, composite materials, environmental technologies, technologies for forestry and agriculture, information technology, and precision manufacturing. Now, particularly those last two, relatively broad information technology, things involving software, precision manufacturing, making things efficiently, at a relatively large scale. So, those, we could try to be flexible there. If you have a program that supports small businesses generally, as long as you can clarify that, as part of that, we're also trying to spur more business growth, and perhaps there's a couple of those technology sectors I just rattled off that your organization is more directly involved in already. So those might be, sectors that you show a clear, intention to support those industries. But yeah, it's a good question that I think, again, that's one where it's worth an email to arpagrants@maingtechnology.org to say, hey, here's what we're thinking. Is this going to align with both, with all the guidelines? Matt, does that make anything you'd add?
It came up in the last session as well, Jen. And the example that I would use is that we recognize that many of these programs cannot be all geared towards just companies that are in the technology sectors. But we also, on the other side, we want to make sure that the program doesn't in some way preclude these kind of companies. So if your program was being developed for companies that sell clothing, in Maine, and it's exclusive to clothing retailers, we would have to tell you that we just don't see the fit, right? It was a lot easier for us when we did the first Prime Fund, because when the business submitted an application, it was very easy to determine if they were in one of the 7 sectors. It's much more of a gray area for us in these ecosystems. But as long as you're not precluding technology companies and are in some way reaching out to those organizations and those companies as well, I think that you would probably stay in good standing with us.
Great, thanks. That's really helpful, actually.
Great. And that, on that, one other, a disclaimer of sorts to add to the end here, a lot of the questions around eligibility, can this proposed use of funds count? There's one question as to whether it's something that's allowable. And then there's the separate question in this case of whether it will, just because it's eligible doesn't mean we're guaranteed funding in this case, just because another piece of the state legislation required this to be a competitive process. We do anticipate that we're going to get a significant number of applications. We've only got 5 million to award. We're certainly going to try to make that money go as far as possible. But at the end of the day, it's not likely we're going to be able to approve every application received. So that's the one question is whether it's eligible. Another question is, well, will it score high enough to qualify for funding? So
Yeah,
just putting that disclaimer.
I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you guys know that about the prior programs. So, all right, very good. Well, that we'll stay on for a few more minutes. If anybody wants to ask another question, feel free to unmute yourself and chime in. If you'd rather type it into the chat box, that's fine too. But unless if you don't have another question, feel free to sign off. Thank you for your time today. And again, encourage you to, if you can get your application submitted before deadline day, I encourage that. And we'll be answering questions right up until the deadline there on Tuesday the 15th. So best of luck to all of you. And again, if you have any other questions, go to the website, email us at arpagrants@amaintechnology.org.
One other comment, Lou, is that email that's shown here on the screen, we do try to answer those questions almost immediately. So you can probably expect an answer within the 24 hours. So it's not going into a black hole. We will definitely get back to you.
All right, excellent. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and shut off the recording now.